بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة بوجهه الكريم. I praise and thank Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I ask Allah to raise the rank and the honor of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family, his companions, and all of those who follow them in excellence into the day of judgment. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us sincere and noble intentions. So I wanted to, after saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and returning the greetings to all of you, wa alaikum salam, I wanted to talk about today the other point that I wanted to mention that I never got around to from the Black Imams Roundtable that was on Tuesday night. And that was the topic that was brought up about the unity of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah. And it is a very important thing to me, and one of the main reasons why we do these lessons, right? And I think it's important that we clarify some things. And when we talk about Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we should really understand that we're talking about correct Islam. Or let's say the correct way to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is what is intended by Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So whenever you hear the term Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that's what's intended, right? That's what's intended. So Islam is the religion of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. It is the deen, the way of life that is accepted by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, Al-Islam. And Al-Islam in reality, if you wanted to summarize Al-Islam in reality, it is the worship of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala through obedience to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and His Messenger. That's Islam. You want to summarize it in a comprehensive way, it is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through obedience to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And everyone who says that I'm a Muslim, whether that claim is true or false, most likely has that intention in mind. So what happens is that claim needs to be validated, needs to be substantiated. Other than that, it's just a claim. So the methodology of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah is the way we confirm that such a claim is true. So sometimes if we move away from fanaticism, which is abundant in our time, being fanatical about our own ideas, that is so abundant, especially among common people. Who are not well educated. And I'm talking about Islamically. And when I talk about us on our terms from the West and around the world, even without Islamic knowledge, sometimes we're not well read. So our level of literacy and education is found often deficient. So what we have in front of us to research is so minimal that it's almost like not having anything. So when we move beyond fanaticism about our ideas and our thoughts and get to really what it is, we find that in Islam, we have several ways that Islam has reached us. Several ways. And from several routes. And some of those routes are valid routes, and some of those routes are invalid routes. It's just how the deen has reached us. And Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, by the agreement of the majority of Muslims, past and present, have established the most trustworthy and verifiable route to practice and know about al-Islam. Right? That's why we say Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah. Right? That's why the term Sunni Muslim, what is meant by it. It is actually indicating to you that this methodology of learning Islam is the best we have to offer. Right? And Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah is just that, a methodology, a way of worshiping Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala by way of obeying Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Is this part clear? Because sometimes when we talk about a thing, sometimes we don't always understand what we're saying, right? So a lot of confusion is led there when we don't have understanding of what we're talking about here. So, what has the majority of the Muslim nation, past and present, agreed upon? Well, you're going to talk about certain methodologies related to Islamic sciences that we learn and practice. So we have agreed to certain methodologies. Among the primary thing that Ahlus Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah agreed to are that the sources that we get our Islamic knowledge are generally in creed and in practice and in spirituality. The sources we get though for those sciences are generally between 3 and 4 methods or sources. 3 and 4. Why do I say 3 and 4? Because depending what we're talking about, certain thing is not going to be an evidence. So it's going to be either the Al-Quran, As-Sunnah, Al-Ijma', and Al-Qiyas. This is agreed upon among Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And Ahlus Sunnah, if you want to understand what it means, it is the people who follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and they are the majority of the Muslim nation, right? They have agreed on points. So if you study the books of the majority of scholars of Islam, you're going to find this is their methodology. No doubt about that. So they're either going to have evidences, whether explicit, clear proofs or derived proofs from Al-Quran and the Sunnah, meaning the Hadith books that talk about the way of the Prophet ﷺ, or they're going to have scholarly consensus on a thing. Notice I said scholarly consensus, not common folk consensus. Scholarly consensus. This is the way it is, right? And in the absence of that, when it relates to al-fiqh, to rules of jurisprudence, they're going to employ that fourth aspect, al-qiyas, and everything that is related to that, which is called al-ijtihad, right? Which is personal scholarly reasoning. That's our deen. And one of the things I think we don't think about, especially as common people, that our religion has reached us through men and women. Our religion, everything we know about it, has reached us through men and women, right? None of us whom we're going to still consider Muslim after they make such a claim receives revelation from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. None of us, right? So none of us receive direct revelation. And whoever says that is not a Muslim by the consensus of the Muslims. So we won't have to have that conversation. So all of us receive our knowledge through men and women, right? And since that is the case, in which we know by observation that men and women as our Sheikh always say, could be right and could be wrong. Every man and every woman outside of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in relation to us, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and of course this applies to all the prophets, but we're talking about in our nation, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is right in everything he says about what he conveyed from Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and he received revelation. As for other than us, we could be right, we could be wrong. Every man, every woman. Do we understand that point? And I'm not saying that sarcastically. I really want us to understand that our religion reached us through men and women. And every man and woman after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could be right and could be wrong. Do we understand that point? Let me go a little bit clearer, more explicit. Your sheikh, your teacher, my sheikh, my teacher could be right in some issues and wrong in some issues, no matter who he is. Right? Because sometimes we don't act like that. Sometimes we think because it's my sheikh, he never said nothing wrong. He can't be mistaken. And that is the most false understanding that anyone can have. So, Ahlus Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, Ahlus Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah are focused on using or referring to the best of those men and women in knowledge and in piety to receive revelation through them in the most trustworthy manner that we possibly as humans can do, right? That's Ahlus Sunnah. And our trustworthy, scholarly men and women are the ones whom we rely upon in understanding revelation, which is the Quran and the Sunnah. And I'm going to take my time on this because I think once we got this part, we understand it will cut down on the number of our disagreements, because we're going to have disagreements, but we have a structure by which we deal with those disagreements, right? And I think without this background knowledge, you don't have a structure to deal with disagreements or misunderstandings. So that's Ahlus Sunnah, right? Now, all these things we should already know. They should be clear. So to be more direct, when we look at Ahlus Sunnah in terms of what we talk about, we're talking about in creed, in aqidah, in al-fiqh, in at-tasawwuf. That's what we're talking about. But what we should realize, there are methodologies of Ahlus Sunnah in every science, right? In every religious science, there are agreed upon methodologies, and I'm talking about Islamic sciences, of how to approach in general that science, right? And everything we learn is related to one or more of the Islamic sciences, everything we learn. So when we're talking about religious things, the sciences of Islam is going to come into it, right? So when it comes to Aqidah, creed, the majority of the Muslim scholars, past and present, from the time of the establishing of a codified methodology among the Muslims in creed, from that time to today, the majority of Muslim scholars have been Ash'ari or Maturidi, right? So in Aqidah, you have two main schools of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, which are called Al-Ash'ariyah and Al-Maturidiyah. Right? This is well defined, well known, not ambiguous, no question about it. Their methodology of belief and how the belief was conveyed and what are the principles that they agree on is clear, no ambiguity about it. Even the issues they disagree are clear, right? This is the creed of Al-Ash'ariyah. This is the creed of Al-Maturidiyah. These are the issues where they differ. This has been laid out clear from generation to generation back to the 4th century with those great imams, and those great imams and their followers took their creed from the early generation of as-Salaf or the early Muslims. That's beyond dispute. That's not a debatable point. And that's why the majority of the Muslims have been Ash'ari or Maturidi. In terms of al-fiqh, the rules of the religion, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah have been al-Hanafiyyah, al-Malikiyyah, al-Shafi'iyyah, and al-Hanabila. Right? That's in the rules of the religion. That M doesn't belong there. Sorry. That should be a comma. Al-Hanafiyyah. And those 4 schools of Islamic jurisprudence have systems, have methodology, have scholars, and that has reached us. There are things they agree on, there are things they differ upon. It's all clear. Established in the books of Islamic law, just as in the creed, those agreements and differences are established in the books of the creed. And from the spiritual side, there is a generally agreed upon methodology of spiritual practice. What you may have when you have what you call a turuk or Sufi paths, you may have different ways of achieving the same objective in terms of spiritual training, right? That is an open, big discussion. But in general, there are certain practices that are agreed upon all Sufi paths that are agreed upon, right? Now, the particular methodology of any individual spiritual guide may differ in certain ways, but fit in a general agreed upon practice. Are these points clear? And are there any questions about what I just discussed? I'm laying a foundation for something I'm gonna have to finish tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow and Saturday. That is Ahlus Sunnah. So, in order for there to be unity among Ahlus Sunnah, everyone who claims to follow Ahlus Sunnah has to understand that methodology. If they don't, then number one, they don't understand Ahlus Sunnah to agree or disagree. If they don't understand that structure, then they don't understand Ahlus Sunnah. Now, one may ask, and I don't really want to go deep into this, but one may ask, what about the Hanabila? Right? The problem with the Hanabila is that the Hanabila within their school have people who have contradicted the belief of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah. We're talking about in creed. We're not talking about practice. We're not talking about al-fiqh. We're talking about in creed. They have people in their madhab who have corrupt tenets of faith, which their own scholars state are corrupt tenets of faith, right? So with that being said, depending who you're listening to among the Hanabila, you're going to get distinctly different ideas. And that's why, as a whole, the Hanabila has had, in terms of the creed, a look that wasn't always favorable because of this issue. While admitting that among the Hanabila are people who are Ahlus Sunnati wal Jamaa'ah, no doubt. But also, since this problem exists, the vast majority of the nation have not followed that particular way of approach. I think that is simply clear and fair, right? No one could argue with that. So when we say that Ahlus Sunnah are the Ash'aris and Maturidis, it is safe to say, and anyone who follows their methodology, even if they don't call themselves Ash'ari or Maturidi. The religion's not about Abu Ja'far al-Hanbali, Abdullah Isa. The religion is not about Abu Ja'far al-Hanbali, right? That's why I started saying not one sheikh. I started that for a reason, right? The religion is not about Abu Ja'far al-Hanbali. It's not at all. If none of us never listen to him or me, we still can be Ahlus Sunnah. Do you understand my point? That's fair to agree, right? I didn't say you said it. I know I'm preventing the train before it goes off the track. I'm stopping it. I'm not saying you're going to take it off the track. I'm just saying before the train goes off the track, I'm going to stop it. So it's not personal to such and such or me. Even if you don't listen to me, Ahlus Sunnah is still Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah. Even if you don't listen to so-and-so, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah is still Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah. Do we agree upon that? That's a question. Do we agree upon that? All right. Because what happens if we start, and this is what I want us to do. If the person is not a major factor in the establishment of a madhab or a methodology, there's no need to mention him. Mention the people who are important in establishing the methodology. We have to get out of stop talking about people. It's distracting us as a whole. None of us in our time make a difference in the reality of what we're talking about. Not one, right? Not one of us. Not one of us make a difference in reality of the matters we're talking about. Not one of us. You follow what I mean? So talking about some body today is a waste of time. It don't make a difference. Except if we're saying they are following the way of these major scholars who are significant in establishing the methodology, and they have conveyed it in a proper way. That's the only, and then we still going to go past them. Do you understand what I mean? Because once we start talking about individuals, this person, that person, it doesn't matter. It's a waste of time, right? And now you get into the personal stuff. You just said something about my sheikh. Your sheikh, my sheikh, irrelevant in the discussion. They're not a determining factor in truth or falsehood at all. Or we could just go to someone else. We don't have to talk about any sheikh. So that's extremely important. If we're going to talk about really learning what we're talking about, because it's not about necessarily in our time the individual, it is the information, right? Right? It's the information. Is it consistent with what is conveyed by Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaa'ah, or is it not? If it is, we accept. If it's not, we reject. That's it. No matter who the person is, doesn't matter. I think that's the point that I want to leave off on because I'm out of time. Right? What does complete the sentence mean, Abdullah, so I can follow you? What does complete the sentence mean? And feel free to discuss. I'm not a dictator. We could talk. or I can listen. Nail, I love you, but I'm not talking to you today. I don't have time for that. Later. But I love you, but I'm not wasting my time with that. Oh, Nail will get no intention except the fact that we say we love you, Nail. And can we all be generous and show some love to our brother Nail? Nail, we love you. But we don't have time for your shenanigans today. Not today. Maybe tomorrow. But we love you. So I'm gonna stop there, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. But seriously, because if we're going to have an understanding, we got to have real conversations, right? And once we have real conversations that are not based on fanaticism, we'll get somewhere, right? Even from the side of the Asharis or the Maturidis, who are really Ashari and really Maturidi, and they understand what that means, right? Even from our side, we cannot be fanatical, right? Because when you're fanatical, you're not looking for truth. You're just trying to be right. And that doesn't help, especially what we're trying to do as a people. We're trying to learn. Fanaticism is our worst enemy, right? To be like, I gotta be right. No, say I want to be right. But there's the possibility I could be wrong in issues, right? I'll tell you what I do one day now, I'll open up and me and you can have a real conversation. And if you really want to learn and you want to talk, we can have it. You know me. I'm fine with it. But I'm gonna tell you a story that I'll quickly share with you. Excuse me. Right? When someone is drowning in confusion and you got people who can't swim, you don't tell them to jump in the water and try to save them. Do you understand my point? If someone is drowning and you can't swim, I don't suggest you jump in the water with them, right? And a lot of people are confused. So figuratively, they're drowning. If you don't know how to swim, don't jump in the water, right? Right? And sometimes some concepts that we have contradict our whole Islamic tradition, and we don't know it, right? So we don't even want to take the time to learn, right? Because we just want to be right. And that's not a way to start. Nail, I know you very well. Why you think I say I love you? Nobody's on your case. I love you. And I think you know me by now. I'll mix it up. I'm not, because really we're trying to do the right thing at the end of the day, right? And we're working with what we're working with, each and every one of us, right? We're working with what we're working with. That's all we have to work with. Nothing we can do about it, right? But we should realize that that, hey man, we're working with, and there's maybe more to this puzzle than I have, right? And you should be open to examine that while sticking to that which is confirmed to you in the process. Tell you, let me remind you of this subject. Oh, here you go. Why ill? I mean, not ill. Saturday, November 27th, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's 11 a.m. Right? Right? Uh, the address is 1201 South 23rd Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So they said that's a library, an old library. 19145. We'll be meeting in our monthly meeting in Philadelphia, imams from the Black Imam Roundtable, with our brothers in Philadelphia, and brothers and sisters, excuse me, sisters, don't mean to leave you out. And we'll be talking about exploring the Aqidah and the methodology of the Salaf. It's not a debate. It's a series of learning, right? So, and I think sometimes we got to get out of that. We just want to learn. It's nothing really to debate. We don't even know what we're talking about to really debate. Right? We should learn first. Then once we learn, then debate the things we've learned, right? We should learn first, and then, if necessary, debate the things that we've learned. Some of us don't know and want to debate on stuff we don't even know what we're talking about. And that's dangerous, right? Like, at least know what we're talking about. Let's formate it. Let's make sure we all understand what we're talking about. After doing that, then let's debate if we have to. But we got to first understand, how you going to debate somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about? That's impossible. Extremely impossible. And you know when someone, a sign that they don't know? When there is obvious something's wrong and you can't admit it. There's other diseases going on which relates to tasawwuf, right? Then you still got learning to do. And you need to learn to distinguish between truth and falsehood. I'm sorry. I must go, but I need a couple more minutes because it's important. I hate to abruptly stop, but just give me a couple minutes. Uh, uh, so this is something that I'm trying to get at. Like if we could successfully get to the point where we're about learning and we learn to the best of our ability, and learning becomes important in our community, we actually know what we're talking about, you're going to find the disagreements are going to be minimized when we actually know what we're talking about. And even if we disagree, the way we handle those disagreements will be different, right? When we understand, when we don't, and we're fanatical, we're going to be fighting forever. You know what we need to do in Islam? The same thing we learn to do in our neighborhoods. Most of us, most civilized human beings, they learn to coexist with people they don't agree with, right? We need to learn to do that in Islam. You do it with your neighbors. I go outside my door. I don't agree with all these people that live around me. I don't agree with them in creed, maybe practice, spirituality, or nothing else. But we coexist and we live together and we look out for each other's well-being. And that's the end of that. And I do what I do and they do what they do. We're not sitting around fighting all day. Right? Right? We have to learn to do that as Muslims. And one of the things we have to do is stop thinking that we have the blueprint for revelation, as if we know every fine matter of every single issue. We may know some things like that, and we may be correct. Then there's other things we're not that correct. Okay. So we'll finish tomorrow, and Saturday, because there are a few points I just want to point out. All right, inshallah, we'll see you at post-Fajr Reflections. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.